So welcome to this wonderful panel. It's always very tricky having a panel after lunch, but here we are, everybody's full and ready for this next session. And welcome to the path to accelerating investments in Africa. So my name is Matsi Mudise. I'm an entrepreneur from South Africa. I have two technology startups, one being in fintech and another one being in edutech. I'm also an entrepreneurship activist, so I do a lot of work in South Africa and currently leading the Startup Act, the South African Startup Act initiative. So that's a little bit about me. And why I'm very excited about this panel is I think it's time for Africa. I think it's really time for us to rise and to shine. A lot of people refer to us as the dark continent. But how are we the dark continent if most of the resources are on our continent? How are we the dark continent if we have a population that's young and that's going to double in the coming decades? How are we a dark continent when the young people are being educated, are exploring the rest of the world, are being globalized, and they're coming with amazing, amazing solutions for the rest of the world? So there is a lot for us to learn from each other, about each other, but the one thing that I know is that for us to progress as a continent, we really need to start connecting ourselves and organizing ourselves. We need to start having solutions for Africa by Africa instead of everybody having solutions for us. But it all begins here in platforms like these, and we thank the likes of AfricArena that are creating platforms where we can engage, where we can connect. So I'm quite excited. I'm glad my two other panelists were able to join us. And I'm looking forward to the inputs. I've been able to engage with some of us. Quite excited with what's going to come out of these kind of platforms. But I'd like to introduce Jihed Boguera from Eventizer, Tunisia. And then Mohamed Kakar from Launch Africa. And then we have another lady on the panel, Asma Bouzaidi. I hope that's correct. Welcome, Asma, Flat 6 Lab. And then we have Ahmed Mahmoud from El Gamia in Egypt. I hope I said all of that correctly. But can we give them a hand of applause? So our panel today is about accelerating investments in Africa, right? And then what examples can we learn from North Africa? And my first question, it's more, I'd like my panelists to introduce themselves and also to tell us what is their claim to fame. So I'll start with you, Jihed.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be a panelist with you today. So, in a nutshell, if you can explain more, what is our, let's say, claim of fame? Is that what makes me famous? What is gonna make me famous? So, all of the above. Okay. So I think, first of all, I'm Jihed Boguera. I'm the co-founder and sales director of Eventizer, which is an all-in-one events management platform. So maybe our entry to fame will be through events. So as we know here, events are an opportunity for gatherings, meeting interesting people, seeing interesting panels and panelists. So I think probably one of my entries to fame will be through some of these panelists when I share some of my experiences, talk about Eventizer, talk about amazing opportunities in Africa and worldwide. So I think that's probably gonna be my entry to fame.
Thank you so much. Mohamed?
Hi everyone, my name is Mohamed Karrar. I am from Sudan. I actually just came here from Khartoum. I didn't know I was famous, but I can talk about some of the things I guess that can count as my claim to fame. Maybe two things. For starters, I'm a 23-year-old VC. So I'm kind of a child of the ecosystem. I feel like I'm getting raised by the village, and a lot of the VCs in the ecosystems really mentor me and kind of take me in and got to where I am. So I'm definitely in a lot of spaces known as the child of the ecosystem, and it's quite wonderful to be raised by this village. And the other part is that I am a venture partner at Launch Africa Ventures. So Launch Africa is an early stage Pan-African VC fund. The team is dispersed all over the continent, but we usually congregate in Cape Town. And yeah, we're very, very active investors. We invest at, obviously we invest at investment committees, but we average about 1.2 deals a week. So we are considered the most active investors on the continent for the venture capital space. So that's also another claim to fame, I guess. Our ticket sizes. Yeah, our average ticket size is $250,000, but it goes anywhere from 100 to 300,000. And a lot of the deals that we make, our LPs actually co-invest with us. About 70% of the time, our LPs actually come in their individual capacity to add to our check size. So sometimes it goes up as high as 600,000 in some cases. In some cases, the RLPs would maybe go 100,000 over what we give. So yeah, it really just depends. But what comes out of our fund tops at $300,000, and the average is $250,000. Sector agnostic. Pan-African, which really opens the floodgates to all African entrepreneurs raising. So I definitely go through a lot of pitches every day, and I'm through a lot of entrepreneurs. And I'm very happy about it. I don't think I would do anything else in the world. I love what I do, and I love the ecosystem.
I think I'm going to steal that. Asma, if you could grab one of those so that you two can share from that side. Just check if it's on. It's fine.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's working.
So my name is, hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this AfricArena Summit. I'm Asma Bouzaidi. I'm Senior Investment Associate in Flatix Labs. So I was just back from Cairo 2 days ago because we were celebrating our 10th anniversary. So a couple of words about Flatix Labs. So a 10-year-old now, Flatix Labs. Everything has started in 2011 after the Egyptian and Tunisian and Egyptian revolutions back then. And we expanded to 7 locations. So in Cairo, in UAE, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Lebanon, Tunisia, and now Jordan. So here in Tunisia, we have a fund which is called Innov'i Seed Fund. Nothing related to Innov'i, the fund of funds. So same name, but not the same entity. We invest in tech companies. It has a size of 30 million dinars, $10 million, with our investors TAIF, Tunisian American Enterprise Fund, Biat Bank, Menax Holding, Sawari Ventures, and the IFC. So far, we were operating for 4 years now, and we invested in 59 startups so far. And we invested kind of 13 million dinars in those startups, and still yet to come. Our ticket size is about 200K dinars. And that's it. So for Flatix Labs, it's an accelerator. We invest and we support startups. We also do other programs. We run other programs like Ignite Tunisia to strengthen the ecosystem of startups. So everything is about startups. Startups are the entities related to startups. So it was with the Expertise France and other programs to support green startups or children-related startups with UNICEF or with HIVOS, etc. So that's it.
Thank you, Asma. Ahmed?
Thank you, Masi. My name is Ahmed Mahmoud. I am the founder and CEO of El Jamaya. El Jamaya is a fintech solution. We already operating in Egypt for a couple of years, 2 years ago. Actually, I don't look for to claim a fame, but I believe that I do have a social impact on people's lives to help them afford the lives, to help them fulfill their needs and make their lives more easy and more smoothly. I believe this is the most important fame that we can achieve as El Jamaya in Egypt, and to expand the concept in new markets and other new countries. That's it.
Thank you, Ahmed. So my next question is around value proposition, because as startups and as investors, we're always saying, "What is your VP? Why should I invest in you?" So the question I have is around, as a continent, as Africa, what do we have to offer? What value do we have? So if you could just share your thoughts around what value do you think Africa has for itself and for the rest of the world?
Yeah, definitely. If you know, guys, about 60% of the African continent populations are youth under the age of 25 years old. And this is huge, amazing. About 80% of them are well-educated youth that at least have reached their high school degree. So we have a great potential of a great youth that are willing to expand their knowledge, create value, create startups, and create business opportunities. We can see through insights, news platforms about the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Africa and so on. You can see a lot of updates, a lot of useful informations, and a lot of exclusive informations about very exciting ideas and very exciting startups coming from Africa. So I think the unique value proposition of the African continent, it's its youth, the huge quantity of youth that are going to be the next continent leaders in the next 10 years, as their ages they are quite young. So yeah, for me, I think that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
So I think a very nice VP of Africa and specifically the African ecosystem is that if you look at some of the more, developed markets, so I spent quite some time with Silicon Valley venture capital firms, and you find that the ecosystem is quite cutthroat, and they compete with each other to the point where today you see this kind of bubbling up of valuation in startups in Silicon Valley, whereas here in Africa, the ecosystem is actually quite collaborative. We want to collaborate with other VCs. We're not here to compete with them. And this collaborative spirit is actually quite nice. It makes a really nice environment to work with. And it also I believe, is going to come to the benefit of startups here. And I don't believe that, once we do secure more funding and once people may have to compete a little bit for some deals, I don't quite believe that over here it will get as cutthroat. And so I think the collaborative spirit is actually quite a value proposition to the continent.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. As the panelists said already, Africa is fueled by young population, growing rapidly, increasingly mobile and tech savvy. So maybe doing business in Africa seems to be not easy, seems to be risky, but at the same time, on the other side, there are multiple hubs. Africa is really booming. There are more than 600 hubs in all Africa. Okay, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa are most known to have advanced ecosystems, but Egypt also is booming. So it has more than 50 hubs. It started to have its own unicorns. So there is Fawri, the fintech startup. There is Swivel, which is in the way for being a unicorn too. So Africa has its own unicorns. It has more than 4 or 5 unicorns, those are metrics or KPIs, which there is something happening in Africa. There is something booming in Africa. So the resilience of entrepreneurs are working on the ground. They are resilient, and this is start to pay off. And so investors need to be to have more eyes on Africa.
If you can make it in Africa, you can make it anywhere in the world. Ahmed, your thoughts?
Yes, as you start saying, we have to have our solutions by ourselves. We have the ecosystem, we have the entrepreneurs who are working hardly. Also, we have many problems that is actually opportunities. And we, as you said, the youth, we have more than 60% of youth who is well educated. They have smartphones. Also, we have our calipers that can make the difference in this year. So I believe that Africa is developing itself by itself. right now. We can share experiences with each others. As you say, we have 2 unicorns in Egypt that are expanding right now. Yesterday, Fawri invested in a startup in Sudan. Swivel, another unicorn, is expanding to other countries. I don't remember, but I think Kenya and Nigeria, Tanzania in Africa. So the market, again, the market developed itself by itself.
Great. So as a South African, I was very excited to come to Tunisia. It's my first time coming up to North Africa, right? I've been in many, many places in sub-Saharan Africa, but North Africa. And the title of the panel is, what can we learn from North Africa? You know, ecosystems like Egypt are in the top 4, right, of tech ecosystems. You know, you've mentioned a couple of activities, a couple of, you know, unicorns that are coming out of there. So I think what makes North Africa special, and what can somebody like me from South Africa and the rest of the continent learn from you?
Yes, thank you so much. So one very important thing to learn from North Africa is resilience. It's understanding your strength, your weaknesses, and also overcoming challenges and issues we are facing daily, especially in the North African region. As far as I know, most of the problems are similar. Maybe like the brutal bureaucracy we face every day with, like, let's say, public institutions and so on, the banking system, also like convincing and selling your idea to investors or even customers. But we see a lot of strength, a lot of resilience in North African startups, and I think that's something we should learn from them. We should understand how they overcame their fears, how they overcame also the challenge that they face daily. So for me, I think strength and resilience is one of the important things to learn from North Africans in general.
But coming from South Africa and somebody from Nigeria, because I've been to Lagos a couple of times, and it's a tough environment. They'll tell you, as entrepreneurs, we're also resilient. So I want to hear more about North Africa, guys. I want to hear more.
Did I say South Africa instead of North? No. Okay.
But resilience is an African thing. So
yes.
More of what makes you guys special.
Okay.
Besides resilience.
So I think I said South Africa instead of North Africa. Is that true?
I think you said North Africa.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I was actually going to talk about the resilience and kind of the cling to hope in North Africa. As you know, the Arab Spring kind of just wiped straight through North Africa, and though it comes with a lot of hope, it is also very detrimental economically. I know in Sudan right now, we're also just fresh coming out of a revolution, out of a 30-year dictatorship. But after the revolution, even though things are very, very economically tough right now over there, it's extremely tough, but it's very hopeful. And only now can we actually go and start making new things. So as you know, Asma was talking about earlier, that only after the revolution in Egypt, here in Tunisia, that you are able to have things like the Startup Act. So it's really the cling to hope in the most desperate of times. I think that is something quite valuable that we can learn from North Africa.
So about Tunisia, even if it's not a big country and with a large population, but it has been ranked in the Bloomberg Innovation Index among the top 60 most innovative economies in the world. And even in 2020, it was one of the first one in the African continent. So why is that? I think it's thanks to its active startup community and its VC ecosystem. It started to really be more dynamic since 2017. There is more investments in startups, which increased by 30%. There is the Startup Act, which has led the way to pave the way to the other African continents. So, like Senegal, Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, they are working on their own versions of the Startup Act. So, Startup Act has really made possible legal and framework and regulatory framework, and to help support the tech entrepreneurs. So it put in place tax incentives, it put in place streamlined processes, It facilitates access to funding by putting in place the ANAVA, the fund of funds, which go into to bring to the table more than 13 fund investments. So all this, our startups are in need of those kind of support and this kind of funding, and access to also to facilitate the access for international markets. So all these efforts make that Tunisia is also booming in its way, but it's also booming. Yeah. So that's the lessons that we can share with other continent Africa.
Yeah, I must say, I mean, South Africa is really looking up to Tunisia in terms of the Startup Act. Every time we have to talk about why South Africa needs it, we always make reference to Tunisia, because you guys were the pioneers on the continent. And then Egypt?
I think the most lessons we can share with other countries is to think smarter, not harder. I know that the ecosystem is not ready enough to establish a business, but we have to be persistent, to have persistence, to look at a workaround solution to face the regulations and the bureaucratics that we have in our countries. The other lesson that as I said at the first, we have many problems. That on the other side is opportunities, and we consider ourselves as a blue ocean markets that still have a very huge potential for, I think, 20 or 30 years at least from now.
And then I suppose also your proximity to Europe, right? You guys are the most closest. It took me 2 hours from France to come here.
Yes.
It takes me 10 hours from South Africa to come to France or anywhere else in the... So I would actually say that's one of the unique things that, you know, comes out of being in North Africa. So I'm going to pause there and give others an opportunity to ask questions to our esteemed investors and startups. Any questions from the audience? Given that we have investors on the panel, because, you know, a couple of people have been asking a lot of questions around investors. So now's your opportunity to ask. Going once, twice. Oh, there you go. There's a winner.
Okay, hello, this is John. I wanted to ask regarding, okay, I come from Lebanon, okay? It's our first, like, I'm discovering the African market. I'm interested in the market for my brand, but then I'm new here. So just from your expertise, what are the industries that were mainly disrupted during the pandemic, and where you feel where the shift happened? And what were the changes before and after the pandemic? That's it.
It's a very interesting question. Asma, what are your thoughts on that? What was emerging during COVID? I think in South Africa, we saw that a lot of digital businesses did well. You know, a lot of companies needed to digitize. A lot of companies wanted to digitize, but now they're forced to go digital because everybody now has to communicate, sell, engage digitally. What came up here in North Africa, or particularly in Tunisia?
I would say the obvious answer is the health tech startups. The shift is on the health tech startups, but on my experience with Flat 6 Labs, we didn't shift our investment thesis. As investors, we didn't shift our investment thesis. It was, we are agnostic and we stayed agnostic, so we didn't prefer a sector over another. And but we just remark that there are more edtech startups, more mobile and delivery startups, which are taking the whole the market in Tunisia. So I don't know for Launch Africa if you have.
So, in my opinion, it was the e-commerce that have boomed in the pandemic. Also, as Asma mentioned, the delivery apps and so on. There is one thing that I haven't seen, like since the COVID startups within startups, I didn't see any any Tunisian e-commerce platform booming. Because what changed in the industry, I think it's all of the SMEs have switched to digitals because they are based on brick and mortar, like stores. You come to the store, you see the product and you buy it. Most of them have shifted to like marketplaces using CMSs like PrestaShop or Joomla or things like that. But I didn't see any Tunisian e-commerce platforms that that took that market share in the pandemic. But replying to your question, for me, it was the marketplaces industry and also digital transformation for SMEs.
For us, it has definitely been pretty obvious when you ask the question, and it's edtech. We are seeing so much edtech, not just in having more of the pretty straightforward edtechs, but we're seeing a lot of new creative solutions in edtech out of the pandemic. There's an entrepreneur, a Tunisian entrepreneur that I met here yesterday that is making a co-studying space online, and I actually thought that was very creative. Yeah, he's right over there. Raise your hand. Yeah, he's right there. So yeah, we're seeing very, very creative solutions in edtech. The schooling system is not, it hasn't changed for a very long time. We still pretty much have the same schooling systems we've had for maybe even a century ago. I mean, it's only now really, really getting disrupted. So edtech, I think we're gonna see education really change over the next few years.
Ahmed, any thoughts?
Thank you. Definitely the fintech. I'm a big fan of fintech. Since in Egypt we have 70% of Egyptians are unbanked, still unbanked. I think the markets in Africa has the same problem. So the fintech is booming very fast, and the wallet percentage, or also the buy now, pay later concept is has a very huge potential in those markets. We saw, I think, Tamara in Saudi Arabia, in less than 1 year, their valuation raised till $1 million American dollars in less than 1 year. So again, it's about fintech and e-commerce, definitely. Also the logistics startups.
Great. I think you should connect with everybody on this panel as your entryway into North Africa. Any other questions? Right. I think one big component of the conversations we've been having at the summit is around policy and policy reform and creating an enabling environment and having the government play a huge role in assisting startups. I think if I have to reflect on South Africa, we have quite a thriving ecosystem, but very limited interventions from the government to actually help us. And we're wondering what would happen if the government was to equally invest as much as the private sector and the ecosystem does. So as founders of businesses, of startups, and also as investors, what is one or few things that if you had one wish, what would you want the government to do to make your lives easier as startups and as investors for startups? If you had one wish only. Think about it.
So a few governments have done this, and they've done this at smaller scales, some larger than others. But I wished. So I come from a wealth management background from Goldman Sachs. So looking at an investment portfolio top to bottom, I wish all governments would make kind of like a sovereign wealth fund that is diversified top to bottom with a small allocation towards early stage private equity or venture capital. So I know Nigeria has done that, and the Nigerian Sovereign Wealth Fund has invested in Aggressive Capital, for example, and they struck gold with Paystack. Paystack got acquired by Stripe. And so that was really nice. And then in the UAE, you know, they do a little bit of investing, and then Saudi Arabia invests obviously in SoftBank. About 60% of SoftBank is by Saudi Arabian sovereign wealth funds. So I wish all governments would do this so that they can actually give all of the citizens skin in the game for startups. You know, startups do well. The startups that do best are the ones that have good people who have skin in the game in their startup, that they have equity in their startups. So if the governments can use some of the tax money and put it in sovereign wealth fund that is well diversified with an allocation that goes towards venture capital, then the country and its citizens can have skin in the game with all of their startups. It could even promote like user acquisition, saying, hey, you know, my money will do better if I use this product, and then they can have a nice collaborative environment with it and bring people along with it, as well as it will help investors, especially local investors, close their funds a lot faster.
One wish.
One wish. So I think this wish, it's gonna be dedicated to SMEs, not to pretty much to startups. So I've seen SMEs struggling with like taxes, struggling with administrations. It's pretty much the same struggle with startups, but with SMEs, their scope of work and also the revenues and revenue shares on the market are not that high and that big. So they are trying to work their way towards like making a profit, and the government is always trying like to absorb everything they are making through taxes, like a lot of taxes you're paying. So I think if we make slight change in the taxing system, with the SMEs, also with startups, I think that's my only and unique wish for Tunisia.
Great, thank you. Asma?
Same. So less bureaucracy, less taxes. There is still room for the Startup Act, so there is still room to have the optimized legal form for startups. Always in the aim to have less bureaucracy and less administrative tasks to do. Crowdfunding law also is here, but we still don't have to implement the text and the applicable texts. So yeah, okay. It would be 3 wishes, but yeah.
Ahmed?
I will say one wish. More flexible and agile regulations and laws in the ecosystem that could help us to accelerate our progress and achieve new and critical milestones.
I think on that note, I'm going to add, well, put an end to this wonderful panel. You know, in terms of, it's been lovely having everybody here. It's good to hear insights from our startups and also insights from our investors. And I wish you all the best, and hoping that, well, we don't have to ask all the questions unless you really want to answer it. But they're quite related, the 2 questions. But yeah, and I also wish that you could all join us next month in Cape Town, because we'll be having, you know, the AfricArena conference in Cape Town in South Africa. So yes, lovely to meet you all, and thanking you, everybody. Can we give our panelists a warm hand of applause?